7, but let me look at the attendees really quickly. Okay, well, we'll give it another minute, but. All right, well, it's 7:01. We do have a quorum, so we will begin. We have 4 out of our 7 current commissioners. So we have a quorum. While we wait for, let's wait for a second. I see that.
I see it. Hold on one second.
Yep, okay, good. Okay, great. Well, now we definitely have a quorum, but we still are looking for 1 CO6 and 1 CO5. Hello, Commissioner Boots. All right, well, welcome to the ANC 1C's meeting on April 6th. We have a quorum, so we will get started. Commissioners, if you'd like to introduce yourselves, please, starting with Commissioner Balaki from 1CO1, please.
Hey, I'm Howard Balaki, Commissioner for ANC 1CO1, which is the southwest corner of the ANC 1C. If you know where the Washington Hilton is, go north and east from there, and you've got my little district. So great to be here. Thanks.
Commissioner Wood.
Hi, Peter Wood, 1CO3, it's 18th to 19th, Biltmore to Wyoming.
Hi, Megan Faulkner, 1CO4, the northwest corner of Adams Morgan, around Walter Pierce Park.
Yes, that's you, Commissioner Boots.
Hello, Ben Boots, Commissioner for 1CO6. My district is on the eastern edge. On the southern is Colorama, going up a little bit in Lanier, to Lanier, and kind of through that neighborhood.
Hi, Jake Falaschini, Commissioner 1CO7 and Secretary. I used to say that it's the heart of Adams Morgan. It's from Florida up to Lanier, from 18th over to 17th. But it turns out it's actually really just the heart of all of the settlement agreements and restaurants and bars in our neighborhood. So it's going to be a fun year.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Fiona Clem. I am the Commissioner for 1C08 and also serve as the chair here. Thank you all. So the next thing on our agenda is to approve the agenda. I have several additions to the regular agenda. The first thing I would like to consider to add to tonight's agenda is the FY22 second quarter quarterly financial report to the agenda. Could I get a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Faulkner. Any questions or discussion on adding the quarterly financial report to the agenda? So all those in favor of adding it to the agenda, please say aye.
Hi.
Any nays? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. We'll add that to the end of the regular agenda. That was 6, am I doing the math right? 6-0. The second thing I need to add to the agenda, or I would like to add to the agenda, which is a little bit timely. All of these things are a little bit timely. That's why I couldn't get them on the agenda to begin with. The redistricting task force for Ward 1 just finished up their work, and one of their recommendations that was sent to the DC redistricting task force was to take Stryver's section out of Adams Morgan. And I would like to add a consideration for support of a dissent letter that we will discuss if it gets on the agenda. Could I get a second for that motion,
I'll
please?
second.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, great.
Just one clarification. I believe that the task force recommended recommendations to the committee of the whole subcommittee on.
Sorry. Yes, I really appreciate that clarification. I was thinking that it was Council Member Silverman, but yes, the committee of the whole. Thank you so much. So all those in favor of adding, and we will add this to the regular agenda at the end of the regular agenda and discuss it then. But could we add it to, anybody in favor of adding this to the agenda, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? Thank you. That passes 6-0 to add that to the agenda. And the last item that we need to add to the agenda is consideration of Kathy Williams as FOIA officer and Peter Wood, Commissioner of 1C03, as the ANC point of contact for the Adams Morgan Reasonable Development FOIA request. Could I get a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. And all those in favor of adding this item to the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And any nays? Any abstentions?
I'm going to abstain.
Thank you. That motion passes 5-1-0. And these items are now added to the agenda, and we will discuss these items after the regular agenda. So the agenda as it stands is now approved. Are there any other additions or deletions for the agenda?
Yes. I would like to motion to add consideration to reallocate $22 from our communications line item to our office supplies line item. I can explain when we discuss it if we add it to the agenda, but I'd like to add that.
I second that. Okay, thank you so much. All those in favor of adding this budgetary item to our agenda, please say aye.
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 Any abstentions? Any nays? So that item passes 6-0. So now our agenda is final. Are there any other additions or deletions to the agenda? All right, great. Moving along to the officers' reports. The chair has nothing to report. Thank you. Secretary's report.
Yes, thank you. I do. We have a vacancy that is currently open for ANC SMD 1C02. It was listed in the DC Register on Friday, April 1st, 2022, page 002805. If you have any, or if you would like any further information, you can contact the DC Board of Elections at 202-727-2525. And as folks may know, the 1CO2 is the south west corner of the Adams Morgan ANC, and a map is available on ANC1C.org.
Thank you, Secretary Falaschini. Treasurer Faulkner.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to share my screen very quickly to present the quarterly financial report, which we will be voting on at the agenda item that we just added. This is the draft report. As we can see, we did not get any significant receipts this quarter. We had some tax expenses, which is why the personnel line item is high, tax and just regular payroll. And then we made a grant, and that is it. I guess I will also just mention for the public's awareness that we are awaiting, I think, I don't know if this was announced at the PSE meeting, but just that we are awaiting approval of some past quarterly financial reports to receive future allotments. And so we are currently, that is why we have not opened a call for grants, since as we can see, we don't have a huge cushion in our bank account. And that is all. If anyone has questions, I think we can probably discuss it when we approve the report, but feel free to put them in the chat or raise them at the end. Thanks.
Thank you, Treasurer Faulkner. Yeah, we will get back to that. List your questions in the chat if you need to. Next on the agenda are commissioner announcements as we go around the neighborhood. If you are the chair of a committee, please mention the time and date of your next committee meeting and possible agenda items if you know them. We'll start at 1C01. Commissioner Balaki.
Oh, thank you so much. And I just have two quick items and I'll be brief. First off, I'm clearly the only member of the commission who's over age 50. So I thought I'd take it upon myself to do a little PSA about the recent announcement from the FDA and the CDC saying that folks over 50 should get that fourth booster shot, because it's become clear that these boosters start wearing off after 3 to 6 months. And this was based on a recent study over in Israel. They got started on all this COVID stuff before we did. So they were able to look at 500,000 people in an HMO who got the fourth booster shot. And they determined that there was a 78% less chance of dying from COVID if you got your fourth booster and you were over 60. Now, FDA and CDC decided to apply this to everyone over 50 because it turns out a third of the people in this country over 50 have significant medical conditions, which is a whole nother issue, which I'll leave for another time. But so if you're over 50 or if you're over 12 and you have a significant medical condition, which I'm sure you're already aware of and you're keyed in on this, but now is the time to get that second booster shot. Just go to vaccines.gov. I did it a couple days ago, signed up in less than 5 minutes to get my shot tomorrow at 2:30 at Walgreens. So it is really easy, even for a Luddite like me. Or if you want, the DC government can come to your home. Call 1-855-363-0333 to arrange for somebody to come to your home and give you a shot if you can't make it out to a site. So consider that today's public service announcement. Also, just since I follow all the stuff on Capitol Hill, having been up there all these years, I wanted to talk very briefly about the appropriations process in the context of why this is important to care about DC statehood. And I'm glad to see Commissioner Nadeau is with us here today. So I'll keep this brief because I'm describing her lived experience over the past 7 years. Under the Home Rule Act and under the things we had to do in the 1990s when they set up the special commission to reorganize DC's finances, a lot of what the DC budget operation does has to basically go through Congress and be scrubbed and reviewed and checked off for a whole bunch of rinky-dinky little picayune things that we are still forced to do because we are not a state. And last month, Congress got it together after the first 6 months of the fiscal year and did a consolidated appropriations bill, which just like last year, contained a whole list of riders. At the end of that section, I won't bore you with all the details, but there's two of them that, in addition to restricting what we can do with federal money we get, we are not allowed to use our own DC raised tax money to implement a system we voted for back in 2014 to regulate the legal marijuana trade in this town because of what's known as the Harris Rider. The other thing that they keep attaching to us is they take the Hyde Amendment, which applies to federal abortion funding, and prevents basically, except for a few small instances, you cannot spend federal money on Medicaid funding of abortion. They take that rule and apply it to us, so we cannot spend our own money because we are not a state. They're able to get away with that. I look forward to hearing from our commissioner, our council member later in the program about what she's working on and what DC, the feds have been doing to DC, because it is an ongoing outrage, and we do need to keep pointing it out, even though having been on the Hill for 27 years, I'm not optimistic about getting statehood. But I thought it was very important that Eleanor Holmes Norton recently raised the point that if the Republicans take over again, This is going to get a lot worse. And if they elect another president, it's going to get even worse. And the thing that worries me the most is we have, in my view, some of the best gun safety regulations in the country here in DC. And the reason we've been able to keep them all these years is people who oppose gun safety rules were afraid to go to courts because they didn't think they'd win. Now we've got so many Republican appointed judges packing the courts, you know, the odds are much better. They can get something crazy out of Congress, take it to court and make it law. And, you know, I'm from one of those rectangular states out west where they're starting to act like, you know, nobody told them that the frontier closed back in 1890. And it's, you know, everybody's packing heat on the streets and it's just nuts. And if you think we have problems here with safe streets, a lot of that is exacerbated by illegal guns on the streets. And because of the rules we have now, we can get our arms around some of it. If we lose the chance to do that, I mean, the people who are upset now about crime in the streets are going to look back on this year as the good old days. So with that, I'll yield back to the chair. Thank you so much. And I look forward to the commission, to the council.
Thank you, Commissioner Bollocky. Commissioner Wood?
All right, thanks. So changing the tone a bit. Next Wednesday, April 13th, will be the April meeting of the Alcoholic Beverage Control and Public Safety Committee. It's renewal time, so a lot of establishments are looking to renew their licenses. If anyone from the community has any comments on any particular establishments, that's the time to bring them up, or you can email us. Beyond that, in 1C03, I mean, it's a busy month. I'll be brief. So first, the Calorama Park, there's some groups that have been doing a lot of work. I had some fun. It's nice to get your hands dirty, in my opinion. So if you see work being done, thank the people doing it. And if you're interested in volunteering, they're still looking for more volunteers, especially for recurring watering positions. So reach out to me and I can get you connected. It's still budget season, so I really appreciate the people who have kind of offered insight for what priorities they think need advocating for. That's almost done. And then we'll see what the next year's budget is. And in addition to that, we'll discuss it a bit later, but redistricting, I was a part of the redistricting process just as outside of my commissioner capacity, but it is, the task forces are convened. So thank you for everyone again who offered input. There's quite a bit, especially through the Google group, I think, on where those lines should be drawn. The process is entirely over, but the input up to this point has been super helpful. I've learned a lot. I hope others have too. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Wood. Would you, if you get a chance, would you be able to put a link to the Google group in the chat, please? Do you have an opportunity?
I mean, it might be. I'm not sure if it's going to be an active thing going forward.
Oh, it won't be. Thank you so much. Okay. Commissioner Faulkner.
Thanks. So the Planning, Zoning, and Transportation Committee will be meeting this month on April 20th. We currently have just one item on our agenda, which is to hear a BZA application at, I believe it's, 2920 18th Street, which is for exceptions related to a back porch. Other than that, I just wanted to mention the Lanier Place and Argonne Place contraflow lanes, which we have received. DDOT had issued an NOI last summer, had taken people's input, and they now have the plans. And sometime in likely the next few weeks, they will be painting those contraflow lanes. Those are contraflow bike lanes meant to provide some safer infrastructure while we wait for safer infrastructure on Columbia Road. There are no parking spots that are expected to be taken, and it is expected to be just one day. And so there will need to be, I believe, no parking on the one day that the painting happens. But just wanted to make sure people are aware that no parking is expected to be changed as part of that. And then also last month in the PZT committee, we heard from DDOT's bus priority team, which is working on the Columbia Road bus priority project. And I just wanted to mention that process is ongoing. This was just in the very first phase, and we'll be hearing from them more. There is a website for the DDOT, the Columbia Road bus priority project, which I will put in the chat right now. And they have a way for people, they have a form for people to provide input. And the form is the best way to provide it, rather than just emailing the team or emailing. You can certainly email your ANC commissioner, but if you want to make sure the bus priority team hears from you, there is a form at that link. And that is all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Faulkner. Commissioner Boots?
Good evening, everyone. I just have a few things. First, the Public Service and the Environment Committee is having their meeting this month, or we're having our meeting on April 27th at 7 p.m. So we have a pretty light agenda, but feel free to join us. And then the second thing I wanted to share is that the RFP for our AV person, basically the person who will be helping handle all of our meetings and all the background to make these meetings accessible, both when we are virtual, but also when we start doing hybrid meetings, hopefully at some point in this year. We have that completed. I will put a link to that RFP. If you're interested, please feel free to reach out to me. And if you have any questions as well, please feel free to reach out to me. Please feel free to forward to anyone else that you may know who would be interested in the position. We are looking hopefully to have that person start in around the June timeframe, but it's very flexible in terms of the starting time.
Thank you, Commissioner Boots. Commissioner Valaskini.
Hi, thanks. Only other announcement other than the open vacancy in 1CO2 is that there was a BZA hearing for the Brass Knob warehouse development on Champlain Street. I think it's 2309. The BZA issued the exceptions that were appealed for. I spoke at that, and one thing that I don't think had come up before in our last meeting was that the developer agreed to actually do 2 additional inclusionary zoning units on both the 3rd and 4th floors. And those are going to be 3-bedroom IZ units. And the developer also agreed to do redistribute the equitable zoning, inclusionary zoning units more equitably throughout the building. So there will be inclusionary zoning on the top floors, on all the floors of the building. So we're really ecstatic to get that kind of affordable housing for the neighborhood, and especially larger family size units for the neighborhood. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Valaskini. So I just have a couple of announcements. One is pertaining to Jubilee Housing and 1740 Calorama Road. They literally got approval today for distribution of funds through the Housing Production Trust Fund. They will be developing 1740 to include almost 50 units of affordable housing, 14 2-bedrooms and 14 3-bedrooms, and 2 4-bedrooms in our neighborhood. We will reach out to Jubilee Housing as this development goes forward. Some of those actually might be at 1460 Euclid, but they're doing 2 projects, one in Columbia Heights at 1460 Euclid and one at 1740 Calorama Road. We will reach out to Jubilee Housing to add them to the agenda and sometime in the next couple of months to give us updates on that. I also wanted to share that the District of Columbia will be closed on Friday, April 15th in celebration of Emancipation Day. Emancipation Day in Washington, D.C. falls on April 16th. This is because the Emancipation Act was passed in 1862 on that date, freeing over 3,100 individuals. So there is a parade and all sorts of activities in Southwest if you're interested to celebrate DC's very special Emancipation Day. And also as a reminder, which sounds crazy, but it's very, very soon, and our primary elections are on June 21st, 2022, which is insane, but that's when they are. So just wanted to let everybody know that. Thank you very much. And then, so the next item on our agenda is Council Member Nadeau. I'm very excited to have Council Member Nadeau here. It's been a while. Good to see you. Thank you so much for taking the time to come to ANC 1C. The floor is yours.
Glad to be here. Also have a feisty 4-year-old in the background who's having trouble with her puzzle right now. So this could be interesting. Hold on one second, actually, if you don't mind. Let me get her dad.
All right.
If I, Madam Chair, since we have a second,
Okay,
I'll just
we're
mention,
good.
I understand everybody's getting a primary ballot in the mail from DC Board of Education, which is nice.
That's true. Everybody will get a primary ballot mailed to them. Thank
Yes,
you.
so June 21st is the last day to vote. That's how we think of it. But some of us have been on the ballot when it's in April, so June doesn't feel so early. If this were 2014, it'd be over by. Anyway, I digress. And her dad is coming together, so we could have some noise until then. But thank you for your understanding. I know we have parents with us, so they get it. So first of all, thank you very much for allowing me to join your agenda tonight. I'm Brianna Nadeau. I'm your Ward 1 council member. I've been on the council since 2015, and I'm currently chair of the Committee on Human Services. I am here to give you some updates from the council and answer any questions you might have. The big news on the council right now, the big activity is the budget, the FY23 budget. Last month, the mayor transmitted her budget to the council, and it included additional funds for schools and youth programming, funding for violence prevention and public safety, 500 units of permanent supportive housing for those experiencing homelessness, additional funding to build affordable housing and also to support homeowners, funds for our immigrant residents to more easily access healthcare, and additional investments in bus priority and bike infrastructure. In Ward 1, we also received funding to build Amigos Park just up the road in Mount Pleasant and to renovate the Rita Bright Center in Columbia Heights. Now the council is in the thick of its consideration of the budget. And I held my final hearing today in the Committee on Human Services. And so from here, I now turn to examining how to meet the priorities of serving our most vulnerable residents, as well as the needs of residents of Ward 1. Now, in prior years, I've funded wage increases to our disability service providers, added thousands of units of housing to end homelessness and to direct services to those in need, expanded programs to prevent children from entering foster care, and expanded public benefits. This year, we have work to do to support our excluded workers, ensure we have enough funding in the budget to prevent violence, further our work to end homelessness, and restore some major cuts to programs like the Ombudsperson for Children. I'm really glad, moving on from the budget for now, I'm really glad to have worked in partnership with many of our ANCs here in 1C in particular around pedestrian and cyclist safety. I've walked with many of you through your SMDs as we identify dangerous intersections, as well as opportunities for better crossings and traffic flow, but we have not seen enough action from DDOT on any of our requests. So I've moved legislation that would improve our roads more holistically, and I'm going to talk about them for just a bit. On February 18th, I introduced the Speed Management on Arterials Signage Amendment Act of 2022 and the Prioritizing People in Planning Amendment Act of 2022, two bills that continue to advance our work on eliminating traffic violence and deaths on our streets. And they serve to complement recent introductions. My Walk Without Worry Amendment Act of 2021, which I introduced last year and just had a hearing last month. And that is about raised and continuous sidewalks. And I enthusiastically co-introduced the Safe Routes to School Expansion Regulation Amendment Act of 2021, introduced by Councilmember Janice Lewis George, and the Upgrading Tactical Safety Projects Amendment Act of 2022, and the Safer Intersections Amendment Act of 2022, both introduced by Councilmember Mary Shea. In particular, I know that many of us were shocked by the death of Nina Larson on Columbia Road earlier this year, and we have all worked together to implement new safety measures along Columbia Road since that time, and even before that time. We know that more robust measures are needed to improve the corridor, and we'll be working together on the full bus priority and safety project along Columbia Road, which provides an opportunity for pedestrian and cyclist infrastructure and additional traffic calming. I've communicated to the DDOT director that we need to be ambitious on Columbia Road. I know this ANC has already passed resolutions reinforcing that mandate, and I'm looking forward to working with you on it. I'm also glad to have worked with the Adams Morgan bid to address community safety issues and to support our businesses by extending the streetery program and continuing to push forward on the pedestrian zone for 18th Street. We continue to make progress on this proposal that has now been with us for more than a decade, but I am thrilled that the bid was able to secure a grant to bring the pedestrian zone this year on a more recurring basis, this time with actual bollards instead of just DPW trucks. We are moving closer to utilizing the funds I dedicated to programming our small parks and plazas like Unity. The bid and our Ward 1 Main Street organization, District Bridges, joined forces to apply for this funding so they can work together to scale programming across the board. And DPR is now finalizing a design build contract for repairs and improvements to public spaces on both sides of Adams Morgan at Ann Hughes Hargrove Park and at Unity. At DemPed's March Madness event last month, they announced that the request for proposals for the 1617 U Street site will be released this fall. And I was very thankful for the community support to increase residential density on that site to make sure we're building the maximum amount of affordable housing we can with the opportunity that this public land presents to us. I've also been advocating intensely for a public library at this site. It offers the perfect location on land that the district owns. DC Public Library identified the area between DuPont and Adams Morgan as a service gap. And I think that U Street and Adams Morgan area will benefit from expanded offerings for community space there as well. I'm working to ensure that a DCPL facility and maximizing our deeply affordable housing are both included in this fall's RFP. I know I think you're hearing later from our Ward 1 redistricting co-chair, Camille Glover. I was incredibly proud of the task force that I appointed and the work that they did in their report to the council. In particular, the work they did to make the process publicly accessible and do proactive outreach to communities we ordinarily wouldn't hear from in something like redistricting. I highly recommend that you review the report. It's in its entirety. I know you're going to be discussing that later. If you haven't read the report, maybe skim it really quickly before anyone takes a vote. I read it fully today, and I think it's an incredibly thorough and thoughtful document. And Oscar is, I think, going to be able to put this link in the chat for everyone. But if he doesn't have that permission, I can do it. Keep in mind, this is really the midpoint of redistricting, not the end. If you're still interested in weighing in on the proposal, there's opportunity for written and oral testimony to the council. It's too late to sign up for the hearing tomorrow, but for April 28th, you can still sign up. And there is a Google form also ready to put in the chat for you. And there's a Zoom for tomorrow if you want to listen in. Just a little housekeeping, literally. Warmer weather is just about here, and that means the Department of Public Works has started spring cleaning. So they began residential street sweeping on Tuesday, March 1. They sort of eased into it. They did some warning tickets, and then they did regular tickets, and now they've started towing. Hopefully you've seen the sweepers on your block. Folks have to move their cars in order for the blocks to be swept though, so all that enforcement really matters. Alley cleaning resumed on April 1st. And just a reminder, litter placed in bags and trash receptacles reduces the amount of debris potentially left behind during collection. File a 311 request for an alley cleaning if the alley poses a hazard to public safety or has become inaccessible to emergency vehicles. That's their language. I say file a 311 request for alley cleaning if your alley is gross, and you are allowed to do it for just about every 6 weeks. If you have yard waste pickup and it's more than the 20 paper bags of yard waste allowed, you should call all that also for 311. They're also out doing graffiti removal now that it's warm again, also 311. And if you're interested in doing a neighborhood cleanup, resources are available for community groups that organize. And if you do a Saturday cleanup, the Helping Hand program will work with you, and they give you toolkits. As I wind down, I just want to note that I know it's been difficult to be together during the pandemic, but we're still making every effort. And I resumed my in-person monthly office hours last year. My recent Brienne on your block was actually at Tryst last week. Oh, you finished your puzzle. Great. Thank you, honey. It was at Tryst last week. And my next office hours will be Monday, April 25th. and we'll announce the location shortly. If you sign up for my newsletter, you'll be among the first to know, and that's at brienneknadeau.com. As the weather warms up, we're going to return to our pop-up office hours outside Metro and other accessible spaces. And of course, I continue to join community meetings like this and residential meetings by Zoom and in person. You can also always reach me by email at bnadeau@dccouncil.us or call our office at 202-724-8181. My constituent services team is working diligently to address all the concerns of Ward 1 residents, closing more than 2,000 cases last year alone and more than 8,000 cases since I took office. And I'm very proud of this work, which I see as the bread and butter of the Ward Council job. We are now hiring a third constituent services staffer. So if you know anyone who is dedicated, hardworking, and wants to serve our community, please reach out. Finally, my annual public safety town hall will take place in person on Thursday, April 21st at 6:30 p.m. at the Columbia Heights Education Campus with our special guest, Attorney General Carl Racine. And I do know that crime in our community is on the minds of many of us these days. And I look forward to having a good discussion about the investments the district government is making in keeping our neighborhoods safe, including the nearly $1.5 million annually that I have dedicated to Ward 1 for violence prevention. So that's it for my remarks. But I am here for questions or comments or whatever else you feel appropriate, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Council Member. Thank you for the update. I have a really quick question, and I actually was echoing Kristen's because I'm just curious about the timeline for fixing Unity Park. We all, it's being loved to death, as we like to say. It needs some fixing up.
Yep. So they are working on the contract right now. Basically, they were doing one thing and then they decided to go a different direction with a design build, which ultimately is faster once it gets going. So they're finalizing that now, and we will give you, they being the mayor, as soon as they've got that ready to go, we will let you know so we can all be watching it together.
One consideration is it happening before June, before the farmers market comes back, I think would be a major consideration.
Yeah,
Is
I think
that
that's
a
a good
possibility?
I don't know, but we will create a sense of urgency around June for them because you are absolutely right.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Commissioner Wood?
Thanks. Thanks so much for all this information. Just one quick thing, back to the budget stuff. Coincidentally, I testified to a different committee about domestic violence and supporting survivors of domestic violence. I did this before you last year, but this year I went to with a different committee. I didn't get to pay attention to health and human services. Do you have any good news for us? Like what's the lookout for the 23 budget?
Right, great question. So we did have a lot of testimony in my hearing last week, also from the coalition and different providers. There is a need still for some funding for particular programs, and also we think probably for victim services. The challenge is, and you probably were at the Judiciary Committee, is that right?
Yeah.
OVSJG, the Office of Victim Services and Grants. So there's this lump of money over there that's very opaque. And so we're all trying to figure out exactly what it goes to, because there was an increase and a decrease at the same time. So it seems like there may be about a $7 million budget cut. And because of the way the budget came down to us, we're still trying to comb through it. So we'll be working with Councilmember Allen and the coalition. Usually I end up putting some money in from the human services side, and we also count on him to do some from the judiciary side. It's just a matter of trying to understand what's actually there before we do that, but absolutely on our radar.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Commissioner Faulkner?
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to thank you for talking about the pedestrian safety, the Walk Without Worry bill and the Safe Routes to School Act, as well as the newer ones. Just this ANC did, pass a resolution in support of both of those, which we were excited about. I wanted to ask, because related to those bills and just generally, one of the things I hear from the most about people is pedestrian safety, especially after Nina Larson's death. And I think there has been a fair amount of reporting and also just sort of people on Twitter sort of after crashes, flagging that many of the cars involved in crashes often have a huge amount of unpaid speeding tickets and other tickets for unsafe driving. And I know that there's been some discussion on the council about that. Some of these people are boot eligible. Some of these people are DC or sorry, Maryland and Virginia drivers who are just not paying. And I know there is a whole thing with the district trying to get that payment. So I just wanted to ask if there's anything that the council is doing, and if there's, you know, any plan to really address that, since it seems like a lot of the traffic, you know, the traffic, the crashes and the things that are causing injuries and deaths are coming from people who have, you know, already, you know, a really outrageous amount of tickets for driving too fast.
Thank you, Commissioner, for that and for all your work on this issue. Yes, so the council just passed an emergency to provide more, essentially more power to do that, but also there's more money in this budget for booting. This has been a big focus in 2022 for the council. We had a hearing on it earlier this year, and there's sort of a resounding charge for more booting and towing of vehicles that have outstanding tickets until we can get some sort of reciprocity, which would be delightful, because imagine what we could do with all that ticket revenue. But yeah, in the meantime, making it difficult for people to access their vehicles certainly would make the point that we're trying.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions for the council member? Commissioner Falaskini.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Councilmember Nadeau for coming out last night for a community meeting with some of my neighbors in my district to help support our co-op that's right across the street from us here. So thank you so much. And then I guess the one question that I did have was around a couple of the pieces of legislation that you've been working on, particularly the Walk Without Worry, where you had the hearing last month. What do you think the prospects are for getting that passed? And is there anything that we can do to help with that? And then the other piece of legislation that I'm really concerned about is the Safe Routes to School Act that you co-sponsored, and just wondering the same with that.
Yeah, great questions. And thanks to this commission for your support of these bills. Both had a hearing mid-March. So just a couple of weeks ago, although it feels like it's been a million years have transpired since then. They both have very good prospects. The chair is excited about them as well. They had resounding support in their hearings. As you know, maybe you don't know, Councilmember Mary Che, chair of the Transportation Committee, is retiring this year. So she is very motivated to get everything done and not leave any loose ends. So I feel really good about getting these passed. I don't know as much about the costs of the Safe Routes bill, but I can tell you Walk Without Worry is meant to be implemented under the existing budget. So if it does turn out that there is a fiscal impact indicated for the bill as it moves forward, I think we should be able to push back on that. Now it's sort of a fungibility thing, right? If we say if it's going to cost a little bit more to build a crosswalk, might be able to build fewer of them in the existing budget, but it would mean that the law would be able to go into effect sooner. And then in the following fiscal year, if we need to create a separate fund or something for it, we could do that. So I think it has a good path, and I'm very excited about it. And I would be very surprised if it did not pass this year.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner Balaki.
Thank you so much. And earlier in the meeting, you might have heard me touch on the Harris rider and gun safety and street crime issues. And I spent 27 years working for folks like you, so I'm not into like playing gotcha questions and stuff. But I do want to give you just what's on your mind with regard to how we're implementing or facing Harris, and also what are you thinking on gun safety, street crime, cops on the street, all that stuff. I'll just hand you the platform and let you go. Thanks.
Well, Andy Harris, my old friend. So, the Democrats in Maryland had a chance to draw him out of this seat, and doesn't look like they're taking it. So, that is an interesting choice. I'm not sure I would have been that charitable in that seat, but here I am in the District of Columbia. So he's probably there to stay. And I'll just tell you, just for fun, I used to work in the Maryland delegation for Congressman Sarbanes, and have canvassed Maryland's first district many times, trying to get Democrats elected there, and once succeeded in electing Frank Credeville. And that was a lovely 2 years. But in any case, I don't, we're all still working very hard to try to get the bill passed in the Senate. And, unfortunately, it's hard to get anything done in the Senate. But we've gotten farther than ever. And so we shouldn't lose hope or stop fighting for statehood. Now, that said, there's a lot we're doing locally, right? The fact that we don't have statehood does not mean we are powerless. And we have no choice but to address public safety issues as a state, a city, county, the whole shebang. That's what we are, right? So I'll tell you, I work very closely with all of our public safety agencies, whether that's the Attorney General, MPD, or Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. We need all three. And I can tell you that, if you read the news, you'd think we're all fighting all the time, but it's one government and we work together and we have one goal when it comes to public safety, which is to ensure that our neighborhoods and communities are safe for all who live in them and visit them. So for me, when I first came into office, I learned that there were $0 invested in the ward each year on violence prevention. And so I went to work on that even before the NEAR Act was passed, even before we had our public health approach to public safety, pulling in grants and funding wherever I could. And I worked my way up, and now we have nearly $1.5 million a year coming to Ward 1 on violence prevention. So I'm not going to let up on that because it's that work that's going to end the violence in our communities. I work very closely with MPD all across the ward. I speak regularly with our captains and our commanders about what they're up to and what resources they need. And the truth is that, you use different intervention for different types of crime. We have a little bit of everything in Ward 1, so we need a little bit of everything to solve it. So that's what we're doing now. You mentioned just now and earlier, the focus on getting guns off the street. So I introduced our red flag law, which allows us to get more guns off the street through when somebody is going to hurt somebody with a gun, themselves or someone else, we can seize those weapons and get them out of their hands, which saves lives, period. Right. So we didn't have that law. I introduced it. Councilmember Allen in the Judiciary Committee helped me get it through the finish line. We've also constantly been updating our laws to keep up with new technology. So the proliferation of what we call ghost guns, which are essentially guns you can build at home. They don't have serial numbers. We had to keep changing the law so that our law enforcement officials could go after. I've talked with the chief a lot about this. We had a conversation about it last week. The partnerships that they have with the feds on tracing ballistics and identifying weapons that have been used in multiple cases is really helpful, because the truth is that there's not that many people committing acts of violence here in the district. And if we can link different shootings, then we can close more cases and really give people peace of mind that we are making progress and actually make that progress. We are also trying to prevent people from picking up guns in the first place through many of our prevention programs, whether it's our Pathways program, where people get counseling and jobs at the end, and a path out of that life of violence. And I can't say enough about how important it is. I mean, many young people are just one disagreement away from picking up a gun when they never have before, because of the easy access to guns, and that changes their life. It changes their victim's life forever. So more investments that we make in youth programming, in violence prevention programming, the fewer shooters we have. And that's good, because we don't have that many to start with. So if the combination of serving justice to those picking up the guns and preventing the new ones from picking up guns, that's how we end this. So that's our plan. That's what we're doing. The chief in his new budget has asked for $850,000 for some new tech that will help them better close cases as well. So I'll be talking with Councilmember Allen to make sure that that's going to be included in the committee's print as it comes before the full council. So that's sort of the gamut of things. And for those who are interested, again, let me plug my safety town hall in person with the Attorney General will be Thursday, April 21st at 6:30 at the Columbia Heights Education Campus. You don't need to RSVP, just come. I think we'll probably be able to stream it. We'll put that information out soon. But if you feel comfortable coming in person, it's a nice experience. We set up the cafeteria with rounds, and you can sort of get to know the people you're sitting with and have conversations. It's not just a sort of presentation. It's more of a discussion. So thank you for that question.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions or that you'd like to bring up with the council member? Participants, are there any participants who have questions for the council member?
I'm looking at the chat, Madam Chair, and I may have just talked them into submission.
There's a lot of
Fiona,
updates. No direct.
Do you mind if I ask a question?
Go ahead, Gordon. Thank you.
Thanks, council member. I had a question about the booting and towing situation. So maybe I misread the mayor's budget proposal, but it seemed like her suggested funding still didn't create a significantly larger amount of booting and towing. Like it maybe added 2 people, FTEs in like 1 truck or something. Can you talk about how that'll change?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. It's teams. So she has 1 team right now and she tripled it, which means she'll be adding 3 teams. But I think we're going to be looking at that in the council too, because it's been a big focus of ours. But I would say it's moving in the right direction. It's also really important to understand that there's only been 1 booting team for the whole city. And it does illustrate why we are where we are. So I would say this, like in Gordon, I know you're really plugged in on these issues, that advocacy around this to the Committee on Transportation is really timely, so that they can expand that budget line item. FTEs are not that expensive in the scheme of a budget. So I think that's definitely something we'll all be looking at and working on. And then also just making sure that everybody has the authority to do it. So we had passed an emergency bill that I can get you more details on, Gordon, if you're interested.
Thank you. All right. So
We have 2 hands raised.
yes, I see that. Thanks,
yes.
Gordon.
So
Yes, I just wanted to. Thanks, Gordon.
Go ahead.
I wanted to clarify if the hand raises are for questions for the council member, please. Go ahead and promote them.
Okay, Richard, you should be coming up now.
I don't see Richard yet, but I see Kristen.
Yeah,
Hi, Kristen.
Kristen, go ahead.
Kristen, do you have a question for the council member?
Yes, I do. So thank you very much for your support of the streeteries in the vote yesterday. That's been a real lifeline for so many of our restaurants in Adams Morgan and across the city. My question is about the regs and about the fees that are proposed. So I know DEMPED was meeting with DDOT, I think today, to talk about that. DDOT is trying to put in escalating fees for starting in 2023, I think, and then they would increase each year after that. And they're pretty steep. They're more than like a sidewalk cafe fee. So there's been a lot of concern about that. We talked to DDOT about it. DEMPED is actually pushing back on those fees, which I was really pleased to hear about. The fees are to make up for the lost meter revenue, which I know goes to support Metro. So, but I am hopeful that they can be more creative in looking for other sources of that revenue and still provide more of a later schedule for those fees. So, because that's still a concern, and that space is still being, widely used by our businesses. So, yeah, I think that's a question.
Well, either way, I'm happy to work with you on it. I don't, you are much, thought they were going upstairs, but it's fun to be together, I suppose. You are much better versed than I am on the fee structure, but I'm happy to work with you all in it and figure it out. And you're right, we do need to figure out how to pay Metro too. So
yeah,
it's a balance. And I know that one thing to look at, not to give you homework, but a while back, the farmers markets worked something out with DDOT to get maybe a reduced rate. Because, when they park the trucks, because we were dealing with this in Columbia Heights. When they park the trucks, they're using the metered spots. So maybe we should look at that template and see what they worked out there too, as we're looking at this.
Yeah. One of the thoughts was that they just mimic the sidewalk cafe fees, and just extend that since many of them already have sidewalk cafes. These are extensions, into the street of that space. Not in every case, but in many cases. So that was one suggestion. But the fees as they're structured right now are even higher than commercial rent and many of those, same buildings. So that's not cool. So again, the regulations are still being worked on. I don't think they're going to come out until the summer, but it's a concern to flag for you. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Richard Ehrenberg, you'd have a question for the council member, please?
Actually, I was waiting for the discussion about the bike lanes on Argonne Place and Lanier that can be brought up.
Yes, thank you so much. We're going to discuss that in a minute, or it could be part of the public announcement area of our agenda. Are there any other questions directly for the council member? Chris Otten, do you have a question for the council member? All right.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Can you
Thank
hear
you.
me?
Yes.
Do you mind reading yours? Okay, sorry. There's some technical glitches. Hi, this is Chris Otten. I am a 22-year Adams Morgan resident, and I wanted to ask the council member. There's been a cascade of subsequent social problems with the fencing of the plaza, 18th and Columbia Road, the Adams Morgan Plaza, and part of the issues there is the fences kind of came in after. Council member, you tweeted out that everybody had safe and secure housing. And in the subsequent actions by Truist to displace the people that were there, and even after that, what we're hearing is that some of the people haven't gotten housing. The people who have gotten some vouchers, or at least a promise of a voucher, there's been a problem there even. So when we talk about vouchers, this is something that's really important for everybody to know. When we hear people get a voucher, I'm coming to find out that that's great. That's step one in the process. Step two is they have to be matched with a caseworker who then helps them with step three, which is to fill out some forms and actually get housing. So this is why folks like Jeannie and Hashim and others who may have been vouchered actually don't have housing yet. And really, we need our city to acknowledge that the housing system here is broken in the step two part of it, which is the caseworkers. So our budget, so I ran for mayor in 2006 and our budget was $6 billion. So here we are, I guess it's 16 years later, and the budget's close to $18 billion now. So it's almost tripled. And yet the caseworkers for the advocacy groups that our council members, including yourself and the city and the mayor, point people to get help, they are out of caseworkers. They don't have enough people serving the folks who've been vouchered to actually get to the last step, which is to be housed. And so people are being pushed out of places where they feel comfortable, even if it's on the street. They have acclimatized to and gotten a network of people around them to help them. And then when they get moved to a hotel or a motel for a couple weeks, because fences might come up and then they never do. And then they're sent back out from the hotels or treated like prisoners in the hotel because they have to be back by 6 or 7 o'clock.
Chris
Yeah.
Otten, thank
Yes.
you so much. Do you have a question for the council member?
Well, thanks for cutting me off, Chairwoman.
Chris, you've been talking for more than 4 minutes. I asked if you have.
I talked so long. I'm sorry. I'm talking so long about people's lives. I'm talking about Miguel Gonzalez, who died next to the plaza. I want the council member, will she acknowledge that when you put out tweets saying everybody who gets housing and is actually not getting housing, to acknowledge that the city's housing crisis is about serving people and they're not doing it. And so where is the money going to? Why don't we have caseworkers to match people to housing? And why did she send out a tweet when she knew full well that not everybody there got housing? Why is that acceptable to our community, to this ANC, to anybody that has received that tweet? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so glad for that question, because this is an issue that I have worked on since I became chair of the Committee on Human Services. So in the District of Columbia, we have a strategic plan to end homelessness. It's called Homeward DC, and it involves housing first is our intervention for folks who are experiencing homelessness, meaning we don't ask them to get sober, we don't ask them to have a job, we just give them housing. Except for that, for many, many years, it wasn't adequately funded. So when I became chair of the Committee on Human Services, I started adding funding 100 units or so at a time. In this year's budget, I passed an amendment that raised taxes on our wealthiest residents just a little bit, and in exchange provides $65 million a year, 2,200 units of housing for people experiencing homelessness, which is the largest investment we've ever made in ending homelessness. So as a result of all this work, and the work the mayor has done closing down DC General and opening up family shelter, we've now reduced family homelessness, and we're finally starting to make a dent in ending what's called chronic homelessness, which is what you think of most commonly, which is individuals who've been experiencing homelessness for a long period of time. In fact, we are matching and leasing people up. In fact, we do have caseworkers. I was really pleased at my office hours last week to hear from a number of people experiencing homelessness in the neighborhood, who actually every single person I talked to at Tris last week talked to me about the caseworker that they had. They had their contact information. They knew who they were. They knew where they were in the process. What happened to Miguel should not happen to anybody. One of the greatest tragedies of what happened to Miguel is that he was scheduled to be matched this month for housing. And for those who were staying on the plaza when the census was done, they are all matched with housing, and were offered, while they wait for their units, were offered hotels. There have been other people since that time, and they also now have caseworkers and they're working. I got to speak to somebody at Tristan. I thank Ren and Chris and everybody for bringing these residents to my office hours. I got to speak to a friend of Miguel's who she has her voucher now and she's waiting on lease up. So it's a big change to have this amount of money in the budget, and it certainly doesn't happen overnight. And people get to choose where they want to live with their vouchers too. So that takes a little while. They get to have to go and find the apartment that they want. But we're working through all of the funding that's in the budget, and I'm excited about that. And because of the funding not having been there in the past, it's taking a while. But this year, the first time since I've been council member, the Way Home campaign, which advocates for those experiencing homelessness, did not ask for more money in the category of permanent supportive housing, which is our best intervention. And that is because of the work that we did with this tax increase. So certainly we have more work to do, but now we are funding at the levels needed to actually end homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. I'm reading through the chat. There's quite a few questions in the chat. There's a lot of questions in the chat about Adams Morgan Plaza. You did mention Miguel Gonzalez. And you did mention that all of the folks at Adams Morgan Plaza were or on the road to being housed. Is that correct?
Yes, now, this was a point in time, right? So it may be that there were more people, but the folks that came to talk with me Tuesday last week also had all indicated to me that they had caseworkers they were working. Many of them would also be eligible for our hotels, our PEP fee program that we stood up during the pandemic. So it's always a person's choice, but we hope that they will come in either to shelter or to the hotels. And we have capacity in our shelters right now. We just opened a really wonderful men's shelter that took lessons learned from the hotel experience and the things that people really liked about the hotels. And then, we still have capacity in our women's shelters as well.
Okay. I'm just sorry, I'm reading through the chat. There's quite a few questions. I think you've addressed many of them.
Yeah, I think that's a desire for more of a dialogue than we can have here, but we had a lot of that dialogue last week, so it's happening.
Okay, great. And then there's one other hand raised. Is it Sandra Decker? Are you raising your hand to have a question for the council member?
I think she's got a question about linear.
Yes, it's just that, some of us just found out about it, and the 1600 block of linear is already way overcrowded. We're afraid it's going to be
I think that one's for the commissioner, so hold on to that one. That one's not for me.
Yes, sorry. Yes, so it looks like we've gone through all of the questions, and I thank you for your time as always, and I thank you for being here this evening and answering and spending a lot of time with us. And obviously, I thank you for your support for strong social services and safe streets, as well as your support for Adams Morgan. And thanks for your time today.
Thank you, commissioners. I hope you have a wonderful meeting. Thank you.
Now we come to the public announcements portion of our agenda. If you have a public announcement, feel free to raise your hand and you will be promoted in order to talk. And we ask that you keep your comments shortish. Thank you so much. Who is the first person to talk? Is that you, Kristen? Do you want to talk?
Sure. Yeah, I can do my announcements. That's fine. Thank you. We're entering into our busy spring programming time, and there's a number of things that are happening. So starting this Sunday through May 6th, we're bringing back the Adams Morgan Art Walk that we did last year. This was a COVID-friendly activity that we thought was worth redoing every year. It's a partnership with DC Art Center where we bring art into businesses, into the windows. So you can walk around and look at art. You can purchase that art. And there's about a dozen locations throughout the neighborhood, a dozen businesses that are going to be hosting art starting this Sunday. A couple of them might not be finished until Monday, but they'll be up for about a month. And there'll be QR codes and information in the windows next to all of the artwork, information about the artists, and about how to purchase the art. So it's a really great collaboration with DC Art Center. The spring drag queen story time is coming back to Unity Park. This is a super fun event that everyone really, really enjoys. So all of the slots for the drag queens are all booked through October. So it's the last Sunday of the month at 11 o'clock in Unity Park. And DCPL is our partner with the Storytime events. They bring their bike, it's books on a bike. It's like an expanded bike cart. It's adorable. Kids can check out books from the bike. We're we're also, due to the grant that we're getting through DPR, we're going to be able to provide mats for people to sit on. We'll store them at the hotel and bring them out each Sunday. So that'll make it a little bit more comfortable for kids to sit in the park. And it's a really fun event. And then in the event of rain, we're going to move it into the community center at the Line Hotel. So we won't have to cancel any of them. It'll just move into the community center at the hotel. So that was another good partnership with them on that event. Bike to Work Day is coming back. This is a regional event that's sponsored by the by COG, by the Council on Governments. And we're hosting another pit stop in Unity Park. That's Friday, May 20th. Our pit stop is from 7:30 to 9:30 in the morning. And if you sign up on the Bike to Work Day website, you can get a free t-shirt. If you sign up for our pit stop, we'll have free t-shirts, we'll have coffee, we'll have bagels. We're working with WABA to have a bike ambassador there. And also we're hoping City Bikes will do a bike clinic. So if you're having issues with your bike and need to have it tweaked, there'll be a bike clinic there also provided by City Bikes, which is across the street. So it's another great neighborhood event. And then a little bit later this spring, we'll have our movie nights back at Marie Reed. Those start on May 24th. They're all Tuesday nights. It's a 5-week series. So it's May 24th through June 21st. The rain date is June 28th. They start about a half an hour after sunset. We have to wait for the sky to get dark enough to show the movies. And the theme this year is Journey or Quest. So we're still finalizing the movie titles. Stay tuned for that, but we have a really fun lineup. So, and we've gotten some great sponsorship for that event as well. And then just a real quick note about the Adams Morgan 18th Street pedestrian zone. I know the council member mentioned it. We are really excited to be finally making that a reality. We have had a slight glitch. DDOT is asking us to do a traffic study in light of the proposal for Colorama and Wyoming converting to one-way streets. DDOT's asked us to do a traffic study. So we put out an RFP today to 3 traffic engineering firms. It's going to take them a few weeks to get the data, to collect the data, to analyze it, and to get it back to us. So that's going to push the pedestrian zone out a bit further, unfortunately. But this is a request of DDOT for the permit for the installation of the bollards. So part of the process, not what we were anticipating, but it's all still going to get done just a little later than we thought. So anyhow, that's a quick update on that. Happy to take any questions if anyone has them.
Thank you, Kristen. Commissioners, any questions for Kristen? Okay, thank you for the update. Sounds exciting.
Sure.
So the attendees, I don't see anybody. I see a lot of notes in the chat, but I don't see anybody raising their hand. Any participants or attendees want to?
Hey, Fiona, one of the Ward 1 Mokers, the mayor's representative, had to leave early. And so if attendees, if you scroll up in the chat, they dropped a message that highlighted a bunch of Ward 1 specific budget proposal things, Anthony Moore. So folks can go ahead and scroll up in the chat and do that.
Thanks, Gordon. All right, moving along in the agenda. I keep inadvertently muting myself, or maybe it's not inadvertent at all. The consent agenda is the next thing on the item. The next thing on the agenda. The consent agenda just takes a vote. The consent agenda. If somebody finds this needs discussion, then we have to pull the item out of the consent agenda. Is the point. The consent agenda is for the draft approval of the draft minutes from the last meeting. They have been posted on our websites for over 10 days. And so all those in favor of passing the consent agenda, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? Thank you. The consent agenda passes 6-0. Moving on to the regular agenda, the ABC and Public Safety Committee heard from Lamont Royale at their last meeting and then discussed a settlement agreement. Commissioner Wood or Commissioner Falaskini, do you want to introduce the settlement agreement?
Skinny, I think is good.
Sure. The settlement agreement is actually, can someone post that? Do we have a shareable copy that can be posted in the? But Lamont Royale is, as folks know, is right up at the corner, or is right up on the corner of Columbia and 18th. I believe that we had a representative that was going to speak here this evening, but the settlement agreement contains provisions that are very common for the rest of the businesses that exist along 18th Street. We didn't hear from any neighbors who were speaking out in any way, but we did still consider normal settlement clauses around noise, and timely closure, and also made sure that we had provisions there for regular trash pickup to reduce the rodent population in the area. But we're excited now to hear from our representative from Lamont Royale.
Hello, I'm Chaz Jefferson. I'm the owner and manager of Lamont Royale. We went back and forth with the settlement agreement, but I think everything looks good. I'm not sure what you would like to hear.
Thank you, Chaz. Really, the settlement agreement, once the settlement agreement is done, and I keep on posting the placard instead of the settlement agreement, I'm very sorry, I'll get the settlement agreement up. The settlement agreement, once the settlement agreement is done, we invite the owners to come to the neighborhood commission to introduce themselves, but it's fine because it is a neighborhood agreement and the people who needed to discuss it have discussed it, and we have solicited neighborhood input if needed. So it's all good, but welcome to the neighborhood. Good luck with your business.
Thank you.
And any questions from commissioners for Chaz? All right, great. Thank you so much. So now we'll vote on supporting the settlement agreement. The settlement agreement link is somewhere. I will find it and post it. But we sent it out.
I think the last link you posted is the settlement
It's
agreement.
correct. Okay, thank you. All right, great. So all those in favor of supporting Lamont Royale settlement agreement that is fully executed by KCA and the owner of Lamont Royale. Thank you, Commissioner Falaskini, for doing the work. All those in favor of supporting this settlement agreement, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? Great, that passes 6-0. Thank you so much, and welcome to the neighborhood, Jazz, or welcome to your
To my own place. I've been in the neighborhood for a while, but yeah, thank you guys.
Okay.
Thanks, Chaz.
All right, great. All right, so moving on to the rest of the agenda that we added. So the next thing on the agenda is the ANC 1C's FY22 second quarter quarterly financial report. Treasurer Faulkner, could you introduce this again, please?
Yes, so we would just be voting to approve our quarterly financial report for submission to the Office of ANC. And I shared that earlier. I can post the link if needed, but I think everyone has seen it. So that is it.
So I have one question actually. but it's really a question for OANC. Are we supposed to be getting a distribution? Have we not gotten any distributions in this
So,
FY?
Yeah, we haven't. We got some distributions in October at the beginning of the fiscal year. The distributions are tied to the allotments are tied to previous quarters financial reports being approved, and we have several outstanding at the moment because of primarily because of grant documentation that I am working on chasing down things from grantees and also resending some documents to OANC and getting so we have several allotments that we will hopefully receive at some point soon, but that is all so those are all submitted, but they have to like be certified by OANC and that can take some time.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for all your work on making things work in the Treasury for ANC. Any commissioners, any questions for Treasurer Faulkner? Attendees, any questions for Commissioner Faulkner? With no further discussion, we will vote on support passing of this quarterly financial report. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. Any nays? Any abstentions? Okay, great. Thank you. So that passes 6-0. All right, so the next thing on the agenda that was added is a discussion on, it's a discussion on a dissent, consideration of a letter to the council's redistricting committee regarding moving Stryver section from Adams Morgan to 1B. Here is the final redistricting report from Ward 1 Task Force, and the dissent letter that was crafted by Commissioner Bollicky is
A lot of help.
there. No, I'm like, woo, yeah. So this letter has been discussed among the commission and has been posted in a bunch of public forums. The timeliness of this is several. The reason why we had to verbally add this to our agenda is because the task force just finalized and submitted their final recommendations on Monday, April 4th. And of all the things in the recommendations, the final recommendations of the redistricting task force for Ward 1 moves a section of Adams Morgan from 1C to 1B. The letter of dissent would be sent to the council because the council will be meeting on this and deciding the final maps before the ANC's next meeting. I recognize you, Camille Glover, and we will promote you in just 1 second. So first off, this is Stryver's section, and it happens to be part of my SMD, but that's not the only reason why I don't believe it should be moved to 1B. Stryver's section is an old section in not only in Adams Morgan, but it is a historic district that was that has been on the historic record for the Historic National Register of Historic Neighborhoods for over 40 years. It is part of Reed Cook. Reed Cook is also a neighborhood that was designed and outlined by Commissioner from ANC 1C, Ed Jackson, in 1981. That was that all of these things, including the historic boundaries of Adams Morgan, which go east to 16th Street, then Adams Morgan was defined in 1958, are multiple reasons why I do not believe that literally grabbing 900 people from their neighborhood in order to add it to another neighborhood for no reason that I can see is why I'm trying to support this letter. I recognize that redistricting is difficult, and I also recognize the work that this task force has put in. There is, if you go through, not only look at the work that they've done, if you look at the final report, all of this, none of this, I am not discounting in any way the work, the compromises, the necessary, all of this that came through. I'm not discounting any of that. What I'm saying is this significant portion of Adams Morgan is specifically that, Adams Morgan. 16th Street has been a dividing line between 16th Street and Shaw neighborhood since Shaw neighborhood was created and Adams Morgan was created. It's not that I have a problem with Button B. It's that this section is Adams Morgan. There's a bunch of other reasons. I'll stop talking. I will let the commissioners discuss or ask me questions. And then we can move on to attendees. There is Camille Glover, who served on the Ward 1 Redistricting Task Force. We will promote her in a minute so she can join the discussion, but I just want to see if the commissioners have any questions about this letter of support for this dissent. Commissioners? All right, if there's no questions, then Gordon, could you please promote Camille Glover?
She's coming up.
Hi, Camille. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, thank you. Camille served on the Ward 1 redistricting group, and she's actually part of 1C08. Yes. Did you have a comment or anything that you would? Did you have a comment about this dissent letter, or would you want to comment on the redistricting?
So, as for the dissent letter, everyone is entitled to share their concerns. So I don't have any concerns or issues. We did give people the opportunity to put dissent that could have gone into the actual final report. We wanted to give, but I know because of the voting, it didn't necessarily, some people didn't feel like they had enough time. So it's okay to do it now. However, there was an opportunity. I know we also, just so that people know, I know everybody wasn't as involved. We had weekly meetings beginning in February. And then we had 3 town halls. I know some of you were very active and involved. And then we had a mapping session that was on March 21st. And then we also had one sort of sub meeting where we had a Spanish language, because during one of our meetings, I think our second town hall, we had some issues with just, some of the translations. And so we actually did do a sub meeting on, I think it was the 21st of March, so that people could, get that information. We also, I do want to just kind of give people a quick overview if you haven't had a chance to read the report. I think that it's a great work of product and a labor of love. The task force went through many there were challenges between the task force. So I don't want people to think that, no matter how the outcome was, if it wasn't what you wanted, if you feel like your neighborhood, the task force went through an array of scenarios. And so a lot of work was put in. The task force did not always agree. We actually had quite spirited meetings and disagreements, and the vote, and Peter's laughing because he was also part of it. Very much a part of the mapping as well. Very hardworking man right here on your ANC. But we knew that everybody was, and I just say this, nobody got everything they wanted. And I'm not suggesting if you feel that your neighborhood was broken up. I encourage you to write dissent. That doesn't mean it will ultimately alter the outcome, because the council will make the decision. But I think that, I believe in the democratic process, but I think that knowing that, I do want to make sure people know that putting a dissent in does not mean that that's going to change the outcome. We were very particular. I mean, we spent hours and weeks really going through everything because of the requirements of having between 1,900 and no more than 2,100. So that really did become a challenge. And so I do want to let people know that it was not without great care and concern how this product came to be. I'm very proud of Ward 1. I believe we are the only ward. We actually put in an equity statement. And I personally am one of the people that worked on that, because we early on realized there were a lot of equity issues, there were racial issues, socioeconomic issues, so many historical issues. So Ward 1, we did a lot of things. We've gotten a lot of compliments, even though, as people have not liked everything, just even how the product looks, the cover map. So I really encourage you, if you haven't taken the time to look at the report, to please do so, really do so. And even, and especially if you're going to put a dissent letter in. So I will stop there. And I guess if there are any specific questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Thanks, Camille. Yeah, that's fine. I appreciate your service on that committee and on the task force. And I know that everybody on the task force, including Peter, worked very hard. I do recognize that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, all right, Commissioner Boots.
I just have a quick question for either Peter or Camille. Sitting on do we lose? Well, Peter, maybe you can answer this question since you're on the committee as well. I read through the report. Obviously, you guys did an amazing job. First, I want to start with that. You can really tell there's a lot of thought put into each of the different sections and pieces. I will admit that I didn't have a chance to look at it very deeply, but I did get a chance to review it. I didn't see any specific reasoning for this particular change. And I was wondering if you could bring any conversation or just like reasoning for, what seems to be, a pretty significant change to our district, and what the thought process was behind that in general.
It might be better to promote Camille just because I didn't write the actual text. I just made like 95% of the maps. I did bring up this point at our final task force meeting, where this was one of the, we narrowed it down to specific areas that were a little bit less clear what ANC, that particular area, would be best suited in for the next 10 years. So that was one of them. It was discussed a bit. As far as the specific text or lack thereof, I'm just not the right person. If Camille could get back on where
This is not about this question is not about the redistricting process. This isn't nobody is maligning the incredible amount of work. No one's maligning the people who did this redistricting. This letter is specifically asking the council to consider keeping Adams Morgan, a historic neighborhood, together in ANC 1C. That's what this letter is. We're not discussing the process that was public, that was noticed, that was easy to get to. No one's discussing that. We're discussing the fact that in the process, at the last minute, in the final meeting of the redistricting, ANC 1C lost the Striver section to 1B in a motion that happened in the middle of the meeting. That's what we're discussing. The letter is about keeping Adams Morgan and ANC 1C the way it is. I recognize that there have been a lot of changes in DC in the last 10 years. But randomly moving 900 people from the west side of 16th Street to the east side of 16th Street is something that I do not support. I'm asking you for your support for this letter. But what I'm saying is that we will vote on it and you will vote however you want to vote on it. But that's what I'm saying. So this isn't about the process that has been a year in the making with a lot of work from volunteers. This is about the outcome that I do not agree with. Commissioner Bollicky?
Oh, thank you so much. And I don't really have a question, but I wanted to speak on the topic very briefly since I'm working from some bullet points that Fiona and Amir provided on Sunday. I was sort of essentially Amir's ghostwriter for this statement, which he has put in the concluding part of the report. And I've read the report. It's an excellent piece of work. I tried to follow the activities of the committee by, dipping into your videos after they were posted. I mean, personally, I go back a long way in the world of reapportionment with the Kansas legislature. So I wasn't too surprised at some of the more interesting characters and ideas that came forth in some of those discussions. I mean, that's democracy at work. I have no fault for the process at all. I mean, you guys work super hard, super long. Peter and Camille should get some sort of, participation award, if nothing else, for sitting through all that stuff. But all we have here is a situation where we disagree with the decision that you guys made, and I won't repeat everything that's in the statement, but it's really, to me, a solution in search of a problem. Mention was made of the great things the committee did with regard to equity, and I mean, we should all be proud of that because that's important. And I mean, folks can look at the overall reapportionment of the wards and say this group or that group was shortchanged. And the way our system works in DC, the ANCs really are sort of the bottom rung of the ladder that you move up in the political world here. And so if we've created in other places more opportunities for more diverse people to get involved at the bottom and work their way up, I mean, that's an important and commendable thing, but that's really not what happened here. This decision, as near as I can see, has nothing to do with equity. It's just some people thought something should go in a different district, and we who are members of that current district don't agree with that. And the next step in the process is we get to present our concerns to the committee of the whole, and hopefully they'll take us seriously. As I said before, casting no aspersions on the process or anything like that, which I thought was, exhaustingly transparent, to say the least. So I just wanted to make a few points and urge folks to vote yes on what Fiona's proposed here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Falaskini?
Thank you, Chair Clem. I just wanted to go on the record saying that I support the statement as one of the other commissioners who represents a portion of this district. That it's very important to me. My kids go to Marie Reed Elementary School. Reverend Marie Reed lived in the Strivers section. Her church was in the Strivers section. Our school and our community is named after her. Our kids are in that neighborhood. Parents and other folks that we represent are in that neighborhood. And it offers an important piece of history for Adams Morgan. And also it is a traditionally more diverse section of our ANC and of our neighborhood, and one that we want to hold together. It was a section of our neighborhood that worked with the rest of the part that I represent and that Chairwoman Clem represents, that fought for the desegregation of our schools and for our neighborhood, and but for that section, we wouldn't have the desegregated Marie Reed Education Campus that is so successful, one of the most successful Title I schools in the city that we have. So it is important for us to continue to represent those families and those kids that are a part of our community and that are part of our school, and to hold them together as a part of a more diverse and inclusive Adams Morgan.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Wood?
I'll be really brief. I'm going to abstain from this just because there's a bit of a conflict of interest, but I will just note that at the final meeting, I did take the similar position to the one that's presented in this letter. Like any single, there's basically no issue that didn't have conflict and disagreement at the 2-month span of the task force, which I think if you're redrawing any political lines, that's inevitable. But this was one of the ones that I think was a little bit less discussed than others. I think that there's still opportunity, like there's no final decisions, just with the ward redistricting, when there were proposal maps presented that wasn't set in stone, that was just a step in a process. It's not until it's signed into law by the mayor that it's actually finalized maps. But just want to be transparent about that. And also just regarding the conflict of interest, every different ward handled it differently, but some people kind of were skeptical of having sitting commissioners on commissions. And just to make sure it's clear, these won't affect anyone who's sitting in office currently. These would be boundaries for the elections in November. So currently this is for positions that are completely vacant. So just to be transparent about that, I don't think it's a big issue, but I just want to be clear.
Thank you for your comment. Yes, and that is to your point, Commissioner Wood, to all the points made. The reason why I wanted this letter I wanted this dissent presented, and and I'm proposing a letter of support for this letter. I'm proposing a letter of support for this dissent, is because it is not final, right? I mean, we all know that making laws is messy. But I would not have done my due diligence, nor would I have supported my 1,900 constituents if I had not supported Stryver's section staying in Adams Morgan and 1C08. And it is not self-serving. It is for the betterment and continuity of a community that has been here for years. Commissioner Boots.
Just I would really, I don't think, I don't have any question on the process. I don't have any disagreement, and everything you said I agree with. I do think, since we have a co-chair of the committee, and as you stated yourself, that this was a quick part of the process that wasn't fully discussed, that if there is any relevant information or relevant discussion that she wants to highlight, that we give her the opportunity to do that before we take a vote. And that's all I was really asking for before.
Oh, she has her hand raised. We were having I was just discussing this with my fellow commissioners, and now I will turn to the public. And it looks like Camille. Oh, it looks like it's Ed Hughes who wants to have a comment.
Unmute. Okay, can you hear me? Yeah, good. All right, so I have a very simple question. Why, if it was merely in response to a motion in the middle of a meeting, why was that motion made? What's the purpose of moving that section of ANC 1C over to ANC 1B? Do we know?
Yes, we do. It will take me a minute to find it. And this is a huge report that I probably should have pulled out that page when I could have. There is a point of discussion in the report on a specific page that clarifies the motion on the floor. The motion on the floor is a little different than the discussion. The motion on the floor was just to move one Stryver section to 1B. So I think, correct me, Commissioner Wood, but I think that for the commentary, one would have to look at the video. The task force report talks about the motion and the voting.
If I could just pop in here for a second, because I watched the video at the time it happened. What we actually had here was Amir made a motion to change the map that was before the committee, because the map that you guys finally looked at with 5 districts instead of 4 is where this change first popped up. And then he tried to move it back to the status quo and was defeated. I think he only got 3 votes.
Yes, there was confusion there was definitely confusion. There was a map of 6 and a map of 5. The map of 5 had 16th Street as the dividing line between ANC 1C and ANC 1B. And the map of 5 commissions total for Ward 1 was voted on and approved. That map that was presented as a vote divided ANC 1C and ANC 1B along 16th Street. Later on, in the middle of the meeting, the presenter had changed the map, and so the discussion was discussing Stryver's section as part of 1B de facto, as opposed to Stryver's section as part of 1B per the motion. And it was incredibly confusing, and nobody was retrofitting the map into the discussion. And so what it looked like is it looked like Adams Morgan was stealing Stryver's section from 1B, when no, in fact, 1B was grabbing Stryver's section from 1C. And the map that was being discussed at the time of the initial motion, which was moving Stryver's section to 1B, looked like Stryver's section belonged in 1B. And then Amir Irani put a motion on the floor saying that, in fact, we would like to keep Stryver's section in 1C, which failed because it looked like it was contrary to the original map that was voted on for 5 sections. So there are many reasons why. I mean, yes. So I don't know if that answers your question, Mr. Hughes. But
I'm sorry.
It doesn't, yeah, I think there may not be an answer. I'm sorry, Commissioner. There may not be an answer, but I want to congratulate you on your diligence in catching this. This is very important. Adams Morgan is a historic district. I don't know if the Stryver section is part of that historic designation, but usually changes like this, from my experience, have to do with either money or constituent numbers. And I mean, there's a cause that somebody would change the boundaries. I don't know if there's funding that's going to the Stryver section that they'll be able to capture or something, but it isn't something that happens kind of out of a vacuum.
Yes, just a little FYI, the Stryver section has a historic district that runs from Florida Avenue east to 16th Street, hard line on 16th Street, south to Swan Street, and west over to Florida and 18th Street. It was traditional. It was a historically Black neighborhood. Frederick Douglass lived there. Calvin Brent lived there. The list of Stryvers is long and historic, and that area has been in Adams Morgan ever since Adams Morgan came into delineation, which was in 1958.
Yeah.
Commissioner Wood? Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on a second, Commissioner Wood. Hold on a second. Mr. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Bollock.
I just wanted to mention his question. I mean, it really goes to the whole point of what we're discussing here. He's asking, what was the point of doing this? And there really isn't one. I mean, I can't share his speculation about money and power and all these things because I haven't really been involved in this stuff long enough. But this, as I said before, this is a solution in search of a problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Wood.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the only person who has insight on this, and I wasn't the person who brought this. I made a lot of the maps, but this was one of the few cases where I actually didn't propose this change for discussion. So that was one part of it. Changes were proposed for discussion, not necessarily for acceptance. The one thing I did hear discussed, and I think it was during our meeting for the votes on these different potential changes, was some people on the task force and the community had interest in, well, they thought that this might be beneficial towards their interest of developing a U Street bid. So I'm not sure to what degree that was completely relevant, but that was the one thing I heard that was related.
Commissioner Wood, I really appreciate this. I have been saying this for 4 days, and we'll say it for more years. Future development, future plans, and your future theories are completely irrelevant. But this is the current map is supposed to be designed and balanced per the 2020 census. Yes, but I appreciate you sharing that bit of information with the commission. Are there any other points of discussion, issues, questions? And are there any from commissioners? Any from attendees? And it looks like I'm not really. Yes, there was a poll sent. Camille mentioned that there was a poll sent, and there is, not sure if it's still open, but there is a little poll that the Ward 1 Redistricting Task Force sent out and to survey the people. But I would also like to say that if anybody listening has a question or comment that they would not like to put in the chat or say right now, I am available for future discussions on this issue, especially with my constituents in the affected area. Yes, thank you, Tony. Tony just mentioned that the residents didn't seem to hear about this. Okay, so if there's no more discussion or questions, we can bring this to a vote. All right, the consideration is writing a letter of support from ANC 1C, writing a letter from ANC 1C in support of the dissent sorry, let me reword that. The motion, the consideration is a letter of support for the dissent of moving Stryver section from Adams Morgan ANC 1C to ANC 1B, and the letter would be directed to the council's redistricting committee. Sorry, Commissioner Wood.
Really quick point of order. Do we need to technically move to vote and then have a second?
We don't need to because we moved it to the agenda. Agenda items.
It didn't come.
Agenda items do not require a second because they're agenda items. It required a second to get on the agenda. And that's my understanding. Okay, well, we can make it for a second if you want. Commissioner Balaki.
You mean to nip it, sorry.
Just a point of information. You just mentioned we're sending this to the council's reapportionment committee. Is this decision made by them or by the full council? I'm asking because I don't know.
The council as a whole, Yes, the council as a whole, which was clarified at the beginning of the meeting when I said something and Commissioner Wood said it's actually the council as a whole, not the council.
So our letter is going to the council as a whole, i.e. the entire council.
Yes.
Okay, that was my point of information. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Wood.
It's like really quick clarification to that question. If I'm not mistaken, it's a subcommittee on redistricting, which is a part of the committee of the whole. And then the final borders would be signed by the council because it's DC law. So I'm not sure which of those you wanted to direct it to, but I know there's three.
So in a situation like this, I probably shouldn't have, in a situation like this, I should have probably said a letter of support by ANC 1C for the dissent and call it a day, because what I will do is I will send it probably to every council member and probably direct it to council member Silverman. Okay, but every council member will, so I move to strike the letter to the council or directly, because I will send it to every council member. But so the motion on the table is a letter in support of the dissent letter.
Second. Is that what we're waiting for?
Thank you, Commissioner Faulkner. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. All those against say nay. All those abstaining say they are abstain. Say abstain, I guess. So you have to say abstain. Okay. So I hate to call you out, Commissioner Faulkner, but I didn't hear an I, and I didn't see a hair an I. Did you?
Oh, I said aye, sorry. I don't know if I had muted, but
Thank you so much. I wanted to get the correct count. The count is 510. Thank you very much. The letter will be sent out in the next 3 days to every council member and possibly some redistricting committee members. Thank you. The next thing on the agenda is a consideration of Kathy Williams as a FOIA officer and Peter Wood as the ANC 1C point of contact for the Adams Morgan for redevelopment FOIA request. 1 second, please. 1 second. On March 24th, 2022, the Adams Morgan for Reasonable Development Group, admo4rd@gmail.com, sent a Freedom of Information request per DC Open Government Act seeking responsive documents from ANC Commissioner Peter Wood, SMD 1C03, with a long list of search terms focused on Adams Morgan Plaza and Truist Bank. Upon receipt of a FOIA request, the ANC needs to determine who will be its FOIA officer. Most ANCs request that the OANC, otherwise known as the Office of the Advisory Neighborhood Commissions, act as the FOIA officer. The FOIA officer clarifies exactly what the requester seeks from the ANC. A FOIA request cannot just be used as a fishing expedition to explore ANC files. There are statutes and regulations all laid out in DC FOIA Act which specify the types of items that may be requested. The OANC requests a contact so that the information and discussion may be funneled through one commissioner to avoid confusion and repetition. When the time comes to locate documents, each of the people who have been FOIA'd, in this case one person, will be responsible for searching public records and personal files for the documents ultimately required, and then they will be sent to OANC and the FOIA officer. In this case, the FOIA officer is a woman named Kathy Williams. She is a special executive. Her title is she's a lawyer in the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissions. That is the statement. Commissioner Wood.
Just because I'm involved, again, I'm going to abstain just as a precaution, but I think this is pretty standard procedurally. I mean, I talked to Kathy, she was really helpful. I'm almost done. I mean, it's a lot of emails and messages to go through. It was pretty broad parameters and some of them are relatively vague, but I'm erring on the side of transparency because I don't really have anything to hide. But I mean, one of the items, for example, I guess is of interest here, was I think it said, quote, any ANC 1C commissioners. Not exactly sure how to interpret that, so I'm being broad. When it comes to contact information of constituents, I'm going through and making sure that anything that's private for someone that's not related to this request, that information is redacted, but I'm close to done. I don't even know if it's necessarily required, but OANC requested just to have a formal vote on the matter, just for, I guess, procedural clarity. So that's all.
It's a matter of the law. You have to have a FOIA officer. It's outlined in the
law
title.
say, this is a genuine question. Does the law say that there has to be a vote? I mean, I, of course, I have no problem with it. I'm just curious.
Well, as the chair, I'm not unilaterally going to name an officer. I'm going to share that responsibility with the commission.
Okay, that doesn't answer.
I mean, what I'm saying is it has to be an ANC motion. So therefore, do you want somebody other than Kathy Williams to be the FOIA officer?
Oh, no, I was just just forget my question. It was just a curious question.
No, I guess I just didn't know if there was a reason for the request. My understanding is that the FOIA officer does a lot of the compliance, and as Kathy, as an OANC government employee who also is a lawyer, she's going to serve, and she has offered to serve in that capacity. So a vote from the ANC is needed because she cannot act as a representative of you or ANC 1C without a motion and a vote of support from the ANC 1C. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Does everybody understand the motion on the floor? I can reread it. Consideration of Kathy Williams as FOIA officer, Peter Wood, and also the letter also has to clarify that Peter Wood is the ANC point of contact for Adams Morgan for reasonable development FOIA request. If there's no more questions or discussions, we'll move it to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And any nays? If you abstain, please say abstain.
I abstain.
So that's a 5-1-0 vote. That motion passes. We have one more item to consider this evening. Treasurer Faulkner, please.
Yes, thank you. So this is just a very simple motion because our PO box rent went up this year, and so we exceeded what we had budgeted in the office supplies line because I did not know it was going to go, or that it was going to go up as much as it did. And so in order to just bring our budget into compliance, the OANC has flagged that we need to reallocate $22 from something else. I'm suggesting communications. Since we have $100 budgeted there, we don't have any immediate plans to go back to in-person meetings where we need printing, and just reallocate the $22 from the communications line item to the office supplies line item to cover that.
Thank you. So the motion on the floor is to reallocate $20. $22. Okay. Are there any questions or discussions about this item?
I just want to say thank you for being so thorough, Commissioner Faulkner.
All those in favor of moving this $22, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? Thank you. Yes, Eric has a question in the chat. Before we end the meeting, I just want to let you know that it is typical of FOIA requests for the person who has been FOIA'd to actually be the ANC point of contact, because it is their responsibility to check in with the FOIA officer, who will then act as a compliance officer. I hope that answers your question. And with that, the meeting is over.